And good morning. Raise a cup to you all. And we have audio. Looks like the processes are processing. Good morning. Today is August 16th, 2024. This is episode 132 of this zany circus where I need coffee. So I am on a tight deadline, so let's jump into it, as they say. So send a question, comment, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch. I should be able to see it. Let's give it a try. Don't be like Toby Flenderson. So the weekend. Oh, I see a mistake in my slides. My apologies. I have a teaser there. Last weekend, I used AI for toilets. Now, that is a strange thing to say because it is a strange thing to use AI for toilets. And what do I mean by that? I mean, I have a toilet where the toilet tank, the flush thing, it leaks a little bit and you hear it and then it refills and it constantly does that. And I have been avoiding dealing with that because it uses some funky flush mechanism that's a little different and it's not your typical basic flapper thing. So I looked it up once, couldn't find the parts, didn't know which part to buy. Well, it turns out that the manufacturer, Kohler, on their website, after I poked around forever, has this thing where instead of trying to choose the model or toilet or style or whatever, you upload a photo of the toilet in the bathroom. And they say, okay, do it at an angle, don't do it too close, don't do it too far. And somehow their website magically identifies the toilet. And it worked perfectly. First time, and I didn't remember the name, but as soon as it popped up, I remembered it. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. AI for toilets. I'm assuming they're using some machine learning model that they trained on a bunch of photos, but it worked exceptionally well, better than any other method that I tried to use to find the parts. And discontinued model, but same internals. And so I found the $8 part that I needed is just a gasket. So went to the store, bought that, solved the problem. So that was a first. I'm constantly thinking, how in the world are we going to use AI, right? Machine learning, LLMs, whatever the actual name is. I don't think it's really AI. It's all these different types of models. And this one worked pretty well. Now, did they spend a obscene amount of money building this thing on the website to identify toilets? Perhaps, but on the other hand, they probably get thousands and thousands of phone calls like, my toilet's leaking, how do I fix it? So it might have had some ROI, or might at some point. So that was a fascinating experience. Also, my slides. I apologize. Let me fix that because I'm giving up all my, there we go. Okay, so the weekend bonus lesson that I had is when engineers and software developers, you probably don't know who you are, but you are the software developer, or there are software developers out there who think they are being super clever, just like these automotive engineers thought they were just so clever. So it starts with a car. This is a used Volkswagen that I bought for my daughter. And Volkswagen I would say not a compact, but it is, for its size and what it's trying to do, it is compact. There's not a ton of extra space anywhere in the car. And so the engine is just jam-packed in the front. And then the convertible top has to do this unbelievable origami contortion act in order to get into the trunk. That's a convertible hard top. So they pulled this off, which, hey, congrats, hats off, cheers to you, clever engineers. It is a feat of engineering. But in the process, someone said, well, how do we save a little bit more room? And they came up with the idea of, instead of having one standard 12-volt battery in the car, looks kind of like this big lead acid battery box, they decided that they would save room and be more efficient by taking that 12-volt battery, splitting it in half, and having two 6-volt batteries. Now, you might think, that's interesting. And yeah, they were able to squeeze two 6-volt batteries, one on each side, somewhat compact efficiently. The only problem is, apparently, as far as I can tell, this battery was only used and manufactured for this Volkswagen, which no longer made, hasn't been made for years. And these batteries were manufactured by a company called Optima, apparently. And that is the one and only company that manufactured these batteries for Volkswagen and sold them and distributed them for these cars. So this team of engineers, they're probably very proud of this. We're so clever. We took a 12-volt battery, split it in two, and we now accomplished the impossible and got this convertible to do everything we wanted. Well, what's the problem with this? Literally, as far as I could tell, no other car on planet Earth uses this design. And no other car uses these batteries. And if you try to search for the batteries for this Volkswagen, literally no results, because no retailer can sell those batteries. They were only, as far as I can tell, only exclusively sold through Volkswagen dealers. Probably a licensing agreement or whatever. No one else wanted them, right? So Optima sold and distributed, designed, manufactured, sold and distributed these 6-volt batteries exclusively to Volkswagen. So the car is old. It's had these batteries replaced before, but because the car was parked for many months before I bought it, the batteries are dead. And I was in El Salvador for a month, so they died again. And so they're shot, and I need to replace them. So I'm looking around, and I realize we have a problem. Like, no one makes these. So I call the Volkswagen dealership by me, and the guy's like, I've never heard of this car. I've never heard of these batteries. I don't know what you're talking about. He looks them up in the system, and I just stay quiet as this dawns on him what is going on with this car. And to purchase these batteries from Volkswagen, I'll let you guess the price. Go and take a wild guess and think about what would it cost to just buy the batteries, not even have the dealership replace the batteries. So the guy looks up, he's like, whoa, you aren't going to believe this. $670. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're like, wow, that's pretty expensive. Not insane, but pretty expensive. No. It gets better. That's $670 each for each battery. Over $1,300 to try and buy two 6-volt automotive lead acid batteries from the dealer. But it gets even better. Even if I were insane enough to spend $1,300 plus tax, $1,400 on these batteries, he goes and looks in his system. There isn't a single battery anywhere in the Volkswagen distribution system in all of North America. Nothing in Canada, nothing in the United States. They literally are not manufactured. They're not stocked. Volkswagen has nothing to do with them. There was one in Las Vegas region. There was one in Southern California. One each. I would have to drive to those dealers in order to pick up the battery. And so that's hundreds of miles of driving to go pick those up. And at $670 each, not highly motivated to do that. So I found a wonderful person who's one of those, epic internet memes who posted this question on a Volkswagen forum in 2012. And they said, hey, how are people replacing these batteries in this car? And they had a fantastic thread. The OP, or the people who contributed to this thread, did a great job. And that's where this photo comes from. I haven't even tried to look in the trunk to see what batteries are in there. And they had instructions on an alternative battery that would apparently fit and would apparently work. And someone said, yep, I've done this. It works fine. Here's the process. Here's what you need to buy. And it's still totally off-label because there is literally no documentation of this process, no recommended batteries. And so I was able to buy these. They're on Amazon, but I bought them from a auto parts store locally, and it shipped next day. So I was able to find what are called the red tops. The OEMs are the yellow tops. The red tops, apparently, Optima now makes these for the consumer market. You can sell them. They are not listed for any car whatsoever, as far as I could tell. They're not listed as being compatible with this convertible, even though they do appear to be essentially the exact same battery, slightly higher specs, but for the aftermarket consumer market. And so while not over $1,300, these two batteries plus the special 6-volt charger that I also bought to kind of supplement this epic story, $800, $600 for the battery, $200 for this high-end fancy 6-volt, 12-volt charger. So it is an $800 adventure for two batteries. Normally, one of these batteries in a 12-volt model would be top, good one, $250 for Optima, top of the line, $350. So this is what happens when engineers and software developers try to be super clever. And I've met several software developers. They're like, oh no, I don't use those standard APIs. I write my own. And I'm like, what? Yeah, because, the customer might want to do this and that someday, and this extends it, and I have this architecture and scaffolding and this extensible framework. Literally no customers want that. None. This is like a delusion of the developer thinking like they read a book and they're like, ooh, there's all these features. Nope. It just adds cost to the project, and the developer I worked with that did that, I'm like, nope, you're out of here. So I've seen it many times in the software development world. This is the automotive equivalent of trying to be clever. Granted, I understand they had compromises, constraints, and this was what they thought was a clever solution. But holy cow, what very interesting experience. So you may remember that last week I talked about I am having the ERP Center of Excellence full-time interns in Berlin, El Salvador, do a project. Instead of just learning Business Central and just doing, configuration packages and RDLC reports and basic support stuff, I wanted to have them build something. So Berlin is going to have their own revenue center. They're going to have their own services. They're going to have their own projects. They're going to learn by building, not just having, work thrown over the transom at them. And so part of that is they are going to build a full service premium help desk service for Business Central partners and customers. So if a partner says, hey, I just don't have the time or the capacity to deal with the incoming support calls for my customers, I just want to outsource that piece. They'll still be their customers of the partner. It's just someone will accept the support call for the Business Central customer or partner, handle it through a ticket management system, triage, SLA, you name it. So that's what they're building. And so we did, this week, we did a help desk system evaluation and selection. And I previously mentioned which systems we're looking at. So we evaluated Zoho Desk, Freshdesk, and Jira. And we started with Zoho Desk and Freshdesk, and very similar in many respects. But based on what we found, one of those just seemed like we're more willing to give it a try for what we wanted to do. And we also looked at Jira Service Desk, which did not last long. And very well, over the course of the week, Freshdesk appealed to everyone more. So we are going to be trying Freshdesk and getting that set up. We're not 100% sure on all the features, but so far, it looks like it'll be a good fit. It's got some nice features, nice UI. It's fast. It's responsive. It really competed with Zoho Desk and just was a more refined solution is how we would describe it. Easier to understand UI. It's simpler, more user-friendly, visually much more appealing than Zoho Desk. And Jira Service Desk, I do not know what that is. I would not call it a help desk. It is not a traditional focused help desk solution. It's like a ad hoc, like, I don't know, a ticketing system that someone slapped together and bolted on to Jira's entire project management suite. And we looked at it and we were just absolutely confused and baffled by what is this thing. The interface of Jira overall is just screaming at you with 97 things. We just said, no, like we tried to look at it. We tried to get it to work. It was just not pretty. So we very quickly in an hour ruled that out. So Freshdesk it is. There may be a few others, but we briefly looked at Zendesk again. The pricing is just too high for where we're at now. And I am still a little concerned about the customer complaints with Zendesk. So yeah, so Freshdesk it is. I'm going to try to get that set up over the next, my big head's in the way. I'm going to get a Freshdesk set up over the next week, and we're going to roll with it. And we are going to start taking calls from customers, from our team, from partners, and start to manage them, work out some SLAs, and do a full formal help desk management service for Business Central. So that is the project. Monday, lunes. Okay, school resumed, which always is kind of a fun time. Parents send their kids off to school and get a few hours of peace of quiet, or get to work on time, or work late, whatever your case may be. So I dealt with that and the insane traffic on Monday. I don't know why every single parent needs to suddenly show up at the parking lot at the same time at the school on the first week of school, but that's what happens, and it quickly tapers off. I had some support calls, had to deal with invoices, payments, typical paperwork there. I provisioned Microsoft 365 accounts for our ERP Center of Excellence interns in Berlin. So they're now up on Office. We provisioned 1Password accounts for them as well, set up a dedicated vault just for them in 1Password, and got them licenses for Snagit, because we're constantly using that even up to this point. And for help desk role, just Snagit is just essential for that. So, and of course, we did the help desk system testing on Monday. Jocelyn and I looked at that. So it was a busy Monday. And when will I get my... there we go. So early in the week, last week really, my developer and I, BC developer and I, had been seeing a failure on our next major pipeline on 2 projects. And this has been going on for 3 weeks, since July, I think, 19th, something like that. That's when I think the first error started to occur in our pipelines. And we looked at it. We were kind of baffled by the error. Cannot implicitly convert type string. And we couldn't see where in the code this was happening. So after the 3rd week of this happening and our pipeline failing, we said, okay, this is not going away. It's not just a temporary thing. He dug into it, and he found that the error appears to be occurring on assignment to caption class. So when he's trying to set the caption class for a field name, which a little beyond my pay grade, he's seen this error, CS0029 cannot implicitly convert type string to string bool. And this is occurring during the build and publishing, apparently. It's not during the compilation, it's during the publishing. And we're just like, yeah, this current is fine, next minor is fine, next major is the only one failing. So we're fairly confident it's a BC bug and not necessarily our code. Maybe it's a breaking change, but the error is very strange. So I asked about this on Twitter. No one had seen it there, but then I posted to Yammer. And thank you, Killian, for finding this. Killian responded to me on Yammer, and I don't know if he knew of it, but he found this on GitHub. Evaluate caption class async method generated with incorrect C# code. Hats off to R. DeBath, who figured this out or found this and tracked it down to this and isolated, knew apparently what was going on and submitted this to GitHub, like top tier folks. And apparently the code can compile, and it's when the app gets published that this is, I guess it's the C# or compiled code, compiled app file that is bad. And so this is apparently a bug in the AL Core compiler, according to this. And it's been this way. This was posted a month ago at this point. So 3 to 4 weeks ago. So yeah, I'm a little nervous about this because it has not been assigned, and next major is rolling around in 2 months. Technically, I believe it's going to release in October and then roll out from there. So hopefully this gets fixed for my sake, if not everyone else's. So yeah, that was interesting. Tuesday, martes, clase de español, my Spanish class, for which I am getting beat up. It is tough, very tough. It does not come natural to me. It takes a lot of time for me to practice, and I just can't keep up with the vocabulary, let alone the grammar and structures and how to do things. I'm slowly inching along, but I am way behind, or I feel way behind. Berlin team, help desk system, testing script. We did more testing. Learned a lot about help desk system. It was really educational. And more invoices and payments. And then once again, because school is back in, I am Uber dad. And on Wednesday, had another good call with a TechFluent candidate interview. Fascinating, the people you talk to who are participating in TechFluent training program. This was a woman who has done journalism, has done public health, has done all sorts of really interesting things, and just amazing person who is just decided to move into technology and software and get some training on Microsoft stuff and just wants a different career. And I think she'll do phenomenal, especially, for instance, in a consulting role that involves lots of interaction, customer conversations, helping people. Seemed like a great fit for that, either in a consulting role or a sales role, pre-sales role, anything that involves lots of interaction with people. Really phenomenal, talented person. So be on the lookout for TechFluent. If you want talent, give Liz a call, contact TechFluent. They have some top candidates, and just a matter of them coming up to speed with the Microsoft technology that you need help with. And, oh, wow. Okay. I must have been semi-editing this page. And Wednesday, yeah, that's all I've got. We had our internal development review call where we talked about that bug in AL compiler, how we're going to deal with it. And then we realized we have been developing a new product, and we need to include support for binary stream multi-entity management. We are seeing a lot of customers just by default implement multi-entity management. So we're now pretty much having to consider MEM for any PTE or app source app that we build now, which kind of similar in the GP world. I don't think we had quite the same level of adoption in GP. It was very popular, but now for whatever reason, 80 plus, 90+% of customers are using MEM. So very interesting. So we're having to build that into nearly everything. I know what I was doing. I had this on Wednesday, but I just pushed this off to its own slides. You'll see why. On Wednesday, I think it was announced on the 13th, which was Tuesday, but I didn't hear about it till Wednesday. And I think I saw it on Tuesday, but I was like, and I forgot. Wednesday, it kind of gelled and dawned on me what's going on. 0-click critical, like top 9.8 vulnerability score out of 10. Critical 0-click vulnerability in all versions of Windows, pretty much. I think Windows 10, Windows 11, and Windows Server, no one is exempt. And it is due to a flaw in the IPv6 network stack, and it is a remote code execution flaw. And apparently, there's no documentation yet on what this exploit is or how to exploit it, but apparently some security researchers in China, as far as I could tell, a security firm in China found this, and they found that certain packets, IPv6 packets sent to Windows machines, can insert a remote code execution or trigger a remote code execution on a machine simply by sending specially crafted malicious packets to that server over IPv6. And there was no patch at the time. It rolled out, I believe, on Tuesday or Wednesday through Patch Tuesday update. And yeah, it is a seriously critical vulnerability. If you can't update your Windows machines, the recommendation is to completely disable IPv6. And that recommendation has actually been standard among, cybersecurity practitioners who are in the trenches for years. They've always said, disable IPv6. It is an attack surface that you don't understand. You're not able to control the skill level required to understand the security implications of IPv6, easy for you to say, are far beyond the skill sets of most organizations. So they have consistently said, from all the ones I've listened to, they have consistently said, disable IPv6 on everything. Unless you have a specific need, a requirement for it, disable it. And that's what I've been doing on all my machines. I have no need for it internally. My ISP doesn't even support it as far as I can tell. I don't want to deal with the firewall rules for it, so I've always disabled it. Sure enough, this apparently can be exploited to fully control and compromise Windows machines. And you may have, and what was interesting about this Windows IPv6 vulnerability is I didn't really see any write-ups of it. It was relatively quiet. Maybe it's going to come out over the next week, but pretty serious exploit. And, it affects all Windows machines that, granted, that are exposed and can be exploited. But in the news, in Wired magazine at least, kind of pop culture news, Wired ran this article that nearly all Google Pixel phones are exposed by an unpatched flaw in a hidden app. And I read this and I was like, well, here we go again, right? But I also, I don't run Android, but for testing, I have a Google Pixel with Graphene. So I follow Graphene OS, and they're pretty dialed in when it comes to mobile security, both Android, Pixel type phones, and iPhone news at least. And they point out that this was a highly misleading article that was motivated apparently by Palantir and iVerify, who I believe are kind of in the security exploit space. And it turns out that this vulnerability is from this application that is deployed by default in Android, but is disabled by default. And so they point out that, like the article says, oh, if someone gets physical access to your phone, figures out how to turn on this one flawed application or service on the Android phone, then give it back to you, you now have an exploit on your phone. And they just point out the absurdity of this. And so there is no real exposure of unpatched phones. There is no just flaw by default. It has to be enabled according to Graphene. So yeah, one gets a lot of news because it got picked up by Wired in his Android phone, whereas on the other hand, Windows has this apparently pretty serious vulnerability that I've heard very little about. And if anyone is familiar, I swear that a couple weeks ago, I read about a website, and I couldn't tell what it was, but my impression was there was a vulnerability with the shared login with Google service that you'll see pop up on many websites. When I just load the page, it pops up, oh, sign in with Google. And I heard that there was a vulnerability in that was exploited. And so there's a flaw or something with the Google sign-in process where you could use the pass-through credentials or single sign-on through Google. And I don't know if that was on a specific website there was a vulnerability, or if it was with the Google shared sign-in service, or if it was just a more adjacent security vulnerability like session hijacking or cookie theft or token theft or something like that. So if anyone knows what that vulnerability was or what that story was about the website being compromised by the Google sign-in service, let me know. I can't find it. I've looked a little bit, but don't even know what to look for. So I don't recall anyone saying anything about Facebook or any of the other shared sign-in. So it was specific to the Google sign-in. I'm curious to know what that was. And I've heard a second reference on a security podcast about it, but again, they didn't really explain what it was. They just mentioned it as a newsworthy article. Okay. On the educational event side, we have the Doug Meetup in Dublin, Ohio. It is the Ohio Regional Doug Meetup, and that is August 27th, 28th, which is a 2-day big event. Embassy Suites by Hilton. Register through Eventbrite there, or go to dynamicsusergroup.com/meetup and go check out that event. And once again, we have a summit and a roadshow. I didn't check the site to see if there are newer ones, but Atlanta, September 25th, dynamicscommunities.com/summit-roadshow. And I believe that's similar to a user group type event, free 1-day event. And more upcoming events, próximos eventos. Days of Knowledge America, also in Atlanta, September 12th through 14th. So time is ticking, folks. Summit North America, October 13th through 17th in San Antonio, Texas. I will be there presenting. And tech fluent applicants and graduates may be there. They are applying for, I guess it's called a scholarship, or basically they get a scholarship or grant to attend for free. So I will be looking to meet some more tech fluent grads there. And we have Directions EMEA 2024, November in, Vienna, Austria. Call for speakers is still open till September 30th. So definitely, if you're interested in speaking or presenting a session, get that submitted ASAP. They will probably have truckloads by now. And so head on over to Sessionize to make that happen and register. And the tool of the week, and I know if you follow me, you've probably heard this a gazillion times, but the reason it's the tool of the week is because we were doing the help desk system testing, and we needed test emails. And, there are only so many email addresses I have handy, and I don't want to get spam. So I generated several aliases on Simple Login to allow me, Jocelyn, and David test with we set up the trial with a Simple Login alias. We set up support tickets with a Simple Login alias. And we had replies back and forth between Simple Login aliases. So very handy. Just aside from all the security and identity and privacy and data breach and all these other benefits, just for testing with doing trials with the aliases, it was fantastic. So really came in handy. Showed Jocelyn how to do it, how to set it up, how it works. So she's like, that is awesome. So if we need to, we may get a login or an account for Berlin in order to use that for future testing. And the blog post, in case you're interested in why I talk about Simple Login, is my blog post from December 18th, 2022, called Improving Personal Email Security at blog.steveendo.com. And very long-winded explanation as to why I went down this journey for my personal email addresses to have 100% aliases. I now use over 500 aliases, and I get over 650 emails in the last 14 days, so over 300 emails a week on these aliases. Newsletters, e-commerce sites, shopping, banking, basically every single hotels, airlines, you name it, school district, doctor, dentist, car repair. Every single person who asks for an email address gets an alias. And I don't care. They say, well, what is this? This is an email. It's like, tough. That's my email. Send me an email, you'll find out. And I've only had a few people question it or be puzzled by it, but many people understand what it is. So yeah, every single person gets an alias, period, no exceptions. Even Walmart in El Salvador asked me for an email address. They got an alias. So yeah, works great. And following up on a question I had last week about wired versus wireless headsets, based on my experience in El Salvador, it seems that Jabra, once again, my head is in the way. The Jabra headsets are fairly popular, the wired ones. There's the Evolve 30, Evolve 40, and these are the older series. I forget what they call their new ones, but their new ones look a little fancier. Now, I ordered one of these off of Amazon. I think it was, I don't know, $60, $80, something like that, which not cheap, but cheaper than Plantronics Wireless. And it came packaged in a full-on call center package. No consumer packaging, no retail packaging, a plastic bag, thin felt pouch with the, call center stickers on it, even had the call center asset tag on there. So clearly repackaged and shipped from some other country and being resold. It doesn't appear to be refurbished, but appears to be new, but yeah, it's kind of like gray market. Very lightweight, like kind of chintzy feeling, seems to work fine. So I'm going to take it to El Salvador, have them use it, give it a try, and see what they think compared to the Plantronics. Significantly cheaper, but I don't know that I would enjoy using it. It appeared to work perfectly fine, but it's wired, and I know myself that if I have a wired headset, I'm just going to rip it off my head, rip it out of the computer when I go to stand up and it gets caught on my chair, things like that. I've been there and done that with this in-ear monitor that I use, and so I had to switch to Bluetooth because I was literally just ripping it out of my ears when I stood up. So, Jabra Evolve 40 if you're looking for an inexpensive wired headset with the little mute buttons and things like that. Thursday, Jueves, morning call with the Berlin team because they're finalizing their day jobs and transitioning over to their internship full time. I'm going to be having a lot more screen time. Eric Ernst says that Jabra uses Microsoft Dynamics 365. Interesting. Go buy a Jabra and support the Microsoft ecosystem. Morning call with Berlin. Going to have a lot more of those as we build the team. I had a call with my colleague Alyssa. We had an interesting request from an ISV. We had done a published application in Entra for a customer tenant for BC API access, but this ISV required Entra directory listing. And all their documentation software said Azure Active Directory and go to this app. Well, that's been deprecated. It's really old, so everything is Entra. So we had to figure out where it was. And as far as we could tell, the new Entra Directory ID API, to read all, is now in the Microsoft Graph API, which has a gazillion categories in it. One of those is directory, I think. So we found directory.readall in there and granted it to the ISV's published app. So we'll see if that solves it. So that was interesting. We're learning a little bit more about Entra published apps. It's not what we do every day. So that was educational. Then on Thursday, clase... Hope I'm not getting a cold. Clase de Español, review class. Again, just, it's rough. It is rough. Full-time kids life and learning a language and trying to practice. And I would try to repeat a phrase, but it's like, what do we like to do? Activities. And I've already forgotten the words. Just so many Spanish words swimming in my head that I can't get a single phrase out. Did another TechFluent candidate interview, really good conversation, and it was great. It was a young person in college who found out about TechFluent through TikTok. And that is the third TechFluent candidate applicant who has found out about the program through TikTok, which is kind of interesting. Whoever, I don't know if it's multiple TikTok videos that they're watching or if it was the same one. Really interesting to see the effectiveness of that TikTok video that got these people to sign up, for TechFluent, do the foundational series, which I think is 5 weeks full time. It's no joke. And they're then stoked to move on to the stage 2 training. And amazing. So here's this person in college, working part-time, hustling, and signing up for TechFluent to do a 10-week hardcore course on Power BI or CRM or Business Central or you name it, F&O. And this person's like, wow, like Power BI just really interested me. That's what I want to do. I'm like, how does a 20-year-old come to that conclusion? It's amazing. So, I mean, seriously, if you are looking for talented, motivated, really great candidates who need the training and mentorship and are willing to learn, check out TechFluent. And I'm just going to keep beating this drum, folks. And then I played Uber Dad again, picking up the kids early, shuttling them around as we adjust the first week of school. And then we continued our help desk system selection. That was yesterday, and that's when we looked at Jira and were horrified, rolled that out. And we tried to just weigh Zoho versus Freshdesk, and we just said, fine, we're just going to try Freshdesk, see how it goes. So we're going to get that set up. And of course, good morning. We are now caught up to Friday with the live stream. Welcome. And I'm going to do a check-in with Jocelyn in a few minutes. And they are wrapping up their work. And when they transition over to full-time internships, the requirement is that they touch type properly at least 60 words per minute. And that is a requirement of the ERP Center of Excellence program. Now, they kind of snuck in before I had that formalized as a participation requirement. And so they are catching up, but all future applicants will require that. And I think I have a slide coming up. And will I have peace and quiet on Friday and the weekend? I don't know. It kind of feels like I have a cold coming on because my wonderful children, the viral petri dishes they are in the public school system. And excellence update. It has been a busy week. We have, as I mentioned, the interns are building a full-on, full-service premium Business Central help desk. We're going to have partner support, customer support, our internal team support. They were going to do triage, SLA, full SLA service level agreement monitoring. We'll have business hours, different communication channels. We're just going to explore and build something. And that's going to be their project, to build a full service, premium, proactive Business Central support desk. ERP candidate application. We're working on the next round of applications and candidates. And Jocelyn is an English teacher. She went to college to learn English and to learn how to teach English. And she can batter me with information about English, like just grammar and what a infinitive is and conjugation and these words I do not understand. She could talk for hours on it, and just like I could talk for hours on ERP stuff, and she's just like, what are you talking about? She could talk for hours on English. So she is the perfect person to develop our English level assessment tests for Berlin candidates. So we're going to use that to score or understand where people are at in terms of English in Berlin and determine whether they could benefit from a scholarship to the English Academy that I sponsor. So that's where we're going with that. We're going to build that. I thought I had it in here, but I have created an application using Microsoft Forms, application as in to apply for the program. So that is live in soft open or soft beta. And so the candidates from Berlin will apply online. We'll have their application. We'll evaluate that. We'll do the English level assessment test. We'll do an interview, and we will have a training plan for them. And I will be going back to Berlin September 21st in order to deliver technology and supplies. I think I'll have like 5 laptops, which is about all I can carry because it has to be carry-on because of the batteries. And warning, you do not want to check a battery in your checked luggage or a laptop in your checked luggage, even if you pull the batteries out. I have had my luggage totally torn apart by TSA. They go through everything, I think, in search of the batteries because I had like monitors and other desktop computers in there. And saw someone from DEF CON had some laptops without batteries. And apparently TSA opened the luggage, ripped the laptops open, took them apart, and damaged them in the process, destroying the laptops that were being donated to a training program. So yeah, I'm not going to ever put laptops in checked luggage, even if they have no batteries, because you're going to have a brainless person just ripping things apart and destroying them. So yep, I'm lugging laptops to El Salvador in order to get new ThinkPads for the interns. We also have a candidate for who has applied for the next round of training on the consulting side, as well as a new AL developer in training. So I'm proactively bringing laptops there. And I am also the local supplier of laptops for the city of Berlin. So El Salvador is rough on laptops, so I'm importing a laptop for someone there who wanted one. So yeah, that is what I'm doing. It's an expensive laptop delivery, let me tell you. And we are working on tentatively planning an El Salvador Dynamics user group meetup, which I've been talking about for about a year now, and also a potential mini conference. We got the facilities, we're building the people, so we just need an agenda and organize it. And one of my contacts in Berlin, he apparently met someone who I think works for a Microsoft office of some sort, is the impression I get, in El Salvador, likely in San Salvador. And so that person has offered to connect us with the Microsoft community in San Salvador, who there are a few people there. And we're just going to try to form a community in El Salvador and hopefully in Berlin to host. So that's exciting. Stuff is happening in insane. Like, I think it's 18,000 people literally on top of a volcano on the side of the hill, middle of nowhere, El Salvador, called Berlin. Apparently the name comes from some German immigrants who settled in there accidentally years and years ago, many, many years ago, and no longer there. But the city retained the name Berlin, apparently based off of a reference to Berlin, Germany. So you'll see lots of colors based on the German flag throughout Berlin, El Salvador. So just what a wild story. And appreciating expertise. I did one last week on a guy who repairs giant Caterpillar engines. And this one popped into my YouTube feed randomly. And I remember the Costa Concordia, the ship that sunk, I think it was off of somewhere south of Italy, if I recall. And this was, I recall it being a big deal at the time, but didn't really pay attention. I think it was 2012, so quite a while ago, so a little hazy. This video by Waterline Stories channel on YouTube is fascinating, very well edited, very good pace, really interesting. And they just highly summarized and just flew through the process that was required in order to salvage this ship and get it out of the ocean. And I saw this title, like many others in the comments, $800 million. You've got to be kidding me. That's not right. And then you see what they did to lift this ship, upright it, and drag it out of there. Unbelievable. You're just like, okay, you don't really think of what it takes and how precarious the position was of the ship right on a shelf, ready to kind of sink further and slide in and break apart. And the engineering they had to invent in order to make this happen. Like, it looks like some of the stuff existed. It's like some type of shipbuilding mechanism or ship salvage mechanism. Staggering. So, I mean, fascinating. I recommend heading over to Waterline Stories on YouTube. Check out the salvage of Costa Concordia. It's like, whoa. And apparently, in addition to, I think, the 32 passengers who died in the original event, there was a recovery diver who also died in the event just due to the hazardous conditions. Like, really tragic, incredible story about how they pulled that off. So hats off to the engineering. They talked about how many hundreds and hundreds of people were involved in the process and how it took far longer than normal and went way over budget because they're dealing with massive storms off the coast, freezing cold temperatures or very cold temperatures. So really crazy, crazy story. So very entertaining. And Q&A. Post a question, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and say hello, ask a question. Today's question, which just popped into my Twitter feed this morning, is regarding recruiting and interviewing AL developers. And this is based off of this tweet from Osseo Services. I apologize, I don't know how to pronounce that. When recruiting an AL developer, do you require them to complete a development test? Interesting question, and this kind of extends to all technical and skill-based interviews, right? Like, how do you assess the skills in this specific domain of this individual? Whether it's AL development, whether it's Business Central consulting, whether it's a Power BI expert, right? How do you assess their skill any more than like past their claims about their capabilities or experience? And it's a good question. And the options they asked about are, if you use tests, what kind? If not, why do you skip them? So yes, we have coding tests, no interviews only, or other. And so this is a poll on Twitter. 6 days left. So head on over to Osseo Services, ASIO Services on Twitter. And if you do interview AL candidates or hire people, do you ask for a coding test for AL? And I became aware of this because Nabil tagged me on this, and he asked, Steve, how do you deal with this for ERP Center of Excellence? And I kind of have a cop-out answer in that I do not, so far, hire experienced AL developers. One, we just don't have the capital to hire an experienced AL developer and bring them on full time because we don't have the volume of consistent, very consistent projects that would cover their costs. We have just highly variable things. We're doing PTEs, we're doing app source apps. And so as a small organization, we have a slightly different approach. And for both our organization and ERP Center of Excellence, our philosophy is you find a good, willing candidate who is willing to learn and work hard, who has ambition, and we train from scratch. I learned all of Business Central, all of AL development, literally from scratch. And I have a YouTube series, youtube.com/Steve Endo, learning AL development from scratch. It's like 14 live streams where I learn AL development. I know nothing. I did Docker. I set up Docker, VS Code, extensions. I use Christoph's AL for Beginners workbook, which is on his GitHub page. And I learned from scratch. What's a page extension? What's a table extension? How do you do fields? How do you number? And I didn't learn everything, but that's the crash course to just get started. Now, you're not going to become an experienced developer based off of that type of content, but it gets you started. So both I and our full-time developer learned that way. And from scratch, we did have development experience, but we had to unlearn everything in order to learn AL, just because everything is fundamentally different and often backwards from what we learned in the traditional .NET world. So if I had to interview a developer, I don't know about a coding test. I don't know what that would be. I don't have one, but we probably have very specific questions about, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that in this scenario with this code sample? So I guess in that sense, it would be a coding test or a detailed coding questions in the interview. I would not take someone on their word that, I'm a great AL developer. And there are many people who say they're great AL developers, have 10 years of experience, but when you invite them in their organization, their development style and architecture and design methodology, you're just like, whoa, maybe it's fine, maybe it works, but I've heard stories that it's like, like they're clinging to the CAL design approach is the kind of some stories I heard, and they're resistant to the AL way of doing things. I would also ask developers, okay, tell me about your repository practices, right? How do you check in and commit your code? How do you comment? What commit messages or descriptions do you do? What do you think about versioning? What's your git ignore? When you check in your code, what is your build pipeline that you set up? What are your DevOps tools, your CI/CD? How do you think deployment should occur? All those ancillary things that are really part of the conversation of AL development, not just how do you do this type of page extension or how do you handle this event or this enum or whatever detailed, really narrow questions are. AL development is now this entire ecosystem. So if you have a developer who can write code well, but can't follow the practices of your DevOps, your pipelines, your next minor, next major, your release schedule, your artifact distribution, you're going to have challenges there. So anyway, long-winded way to say we work with candidates and we train them from scratch. So in El Salvador, I'm working with someone who has never had a coding job before, but he put himself through a Java development boot camp, apparently working with Java and Oracle on the back end. And he said that he enjoyed the back end development. He has done subsequent Java training classes, taught himself English, taught himself Java. And I'm like, great, that's the type of person I'm looking for. So I'm going to be delivering a laptop, mouse, headset, whatever he needs in order to prepare to be a candidate for the ERP Center of Excellence training program. And he will be the first AL developer that we train from scratch. And honestly, based on my experience, I prefer that type of candidate versus an experienced traditional developer because of the number of things that I and my developer we had to unlearn the best practices from the .NET client server traditional dev world in order to work properly with AL. So I don't want a 10-year developer in .NET or Python or Ruby or whatever. I'd rather just work with a new developer and learn AL from scratch that way. Okay, wait a minute. Yep, I guess that's it. Wow, okay, I thought that was something else. But I am late for my call with Berlin, El Salvador. So, salud. And have a good weekend. Have a good Friday. Get some work done. Learn something. And if anyone knows about the vulnerability with the Google sign-in, please hit me up on Twitter, YouTube, post a comment, and point me to an article on what that website was, what the vulnerability was. I have recommended never using any of those services because, once your Google account's compromised, keys to the kingdom everywhere. But it sounded like it was a vulnerability or a flaw in that process. So I'd love to learn more and understand why or what happened there. So have a good weekend. El fin de semana. Adios. Whoa. I went too far. My apologies. Okay, take two. Adios.